You're not going to believe who just sat down together after years of silence. Jeff Wittek, the one who nearly lost his life in that infamous stunt, is now face-to-face with Todd, the former golden boy of David Dobrik's vlog squad. This reunion shocked everyone, because Todd hasn't just been distant from Jeff, he's been completely cut off from David's inner circle, especially after his messy breakup with Natalie. But here's where it gets interesting. Todd is finally spilling what really went down behind the scenes, from David's constant jokes about Natalie to the way the group handled Jeff's accident, and even that infamous run-in with Tana Mongeau that turned into a full-blown internet scandal. The question is Todd finally being real, or is this just another play for sympathy now that he's no longer in the spotlight? Todd didn't hold back when the conversation turned to his breakup with Natalie. At first, everything between them felt like a dream. He described those early years as carefree, traveling, laughing, being kids in love. But once Natalie started working for David, everything changed. Suddenly, Todd wasn't just dating his girlfriend. It felt like he was competing with David, too. The dynamic shifted in a way that Todd admitted he couldn't handle. David's constant jokes about Natalie, especially the ones with sexual undertones, didn't just make things uncomfortable. They slowly eroded the trust in the relationship. Imagine sitting there while your girlfriend's boss, who also happens to be your best friend, cracks joke after joke about her and other guys in front of you. According to Todd, it was like Natalie had two boyfriends. And in his own words, that's when the cracks in their relationship became impossible to ignore. What started as a picture-perfect romance spiraled into silence. Todd said they don't even talk anymore. No memes, no check-ins, nothing. Just total distance. And while the breakup was personal, it had bigger consequences for the friend group, because Natalie wasn't just his girlfriend, she was David's right-hand woman. And that's exactly why what happened next got so awkward. After the breakup, things didn't just cool off between Todd and Natalie, they froze over with David, too. Natalie was David's closest confidant, his business partner, the one he trusted most behind the scenes. So when Todd walked away from her, it also meant walking away from David's entire inner circle. Todd admitted he hasn't been around in months. No more late-night hangs, no more filming together, no more easy banter with the squad. For a guy who used to be right in the middle of every vlog, that silence said everything. And here's the kicker, Todd didn't sound bitter about it. Instead, he almost seemed relieved. He mentioned how good it feels to have friends outside of the internet, hinting that maybe the whole vlog squad lifestyle wasn't as tight-knit as it looked on camera. But make no mistake, this wasn't just about drifting apart. Todd's absence was a direct result of how tangled everything became. With Natalie by David's side, there was no way to avoid the awkwardness. And that distance forced Todd to see the group from the outside for the very first time. And from that new perspective, he started to notice things about David, things that made him question everything he thought he knew about his old best friend. This is where Todd's honesty really caught people off guard. For years, fans have speculated about how David handled Jeff's accident, the crane stunt that nearly cost Jeff his life. And for the first time, Todd admitted that what went on behind the scenes was even worse than people thought. According to him, when Jeff was lying in a hospital bed with his jaw wired shut, David wasn't focused on his friend's recovery. Instead, he was scrambling to protect his own image. Todd recalled moments where the group seemed more worried about another controversy, the one involving Seth, than the fact that Jeff had almost died. In Todd's words, it felt like David cared more about damage control than about checking on his friend. Jeff was in pain, barely able to eat, while David was more concerned about who might expose them. Todd even claimed David was screenshotting forms and covering his own tracks while Jeff was still in the hospital. Hearing Todd describe it, the picture is clear. Jeff's accident wasn't just a tragedy, it exposed how misplaced the group's priorities really were. And the shocking part, Todd admitted he went along with it at the time, too. He said he watched David lie, deflect, and minimize what happened, and instead of speaking up, he stayed quiet. It wasn't until years later, sitting across from Jeff, that Todd finally said it out loud. You should have been their priority, but you weren't. For Jeff, that truth hit hard. But what he said next surprised everyone. After everything Todd admitted, the silence, the complicity, the failure to step up when Jeff needed it most, you'd expect Jeff to lash out. But instead, he did the exact opposite. Jeff told his audience not to hate on Todd. In fact, he went so far as to say he wanted to make Todd lovable again. To him, Todd wasn't a villain. He was someone who got caught up in the wrong crowd, made bad choices, and was finally trying to own up to them. Jeff explained it in a way only he could. I hung out with the wrong people my whole life, and I turned out all right. Sometimes you learn from the mistakes your friends make, it makes you a better man. It was forgiveness with conditions. Jeff wasn't excusing David, and he wasn't pretending Todd had been innocent. But he recognized the impossible position Todd had been in, torn between loyalty to the friend group that gave him everything and loyalty to the friend who nearly lost his life. By welcoming Todd back, Jeff wasn't just offering forgiveness. He was making a statement. The cycle of silence and enabling that defined the Vlog Squad's downfall didn't have to continue. And maybe, just maybe, Todd could be proof of that. But as the conversation continued, it became clear that the David situation wasn't the only drama Todd had to answer for. Because a name from his past, one that always brings chaos, was about to resurface. And that name was Tana Mongeau. Just when it seemed like Todd was finally clearing the air, Jeff brought up another name that always guarantees drama, Tana Mongeau. A few years back, Tana went public with claims that a member of the Vlog Squad had confronted her at an event, angry over comments she made on her podcast. At the time, she didn't name names, but fans quickly connected the dots and realized she was talking about Todd. According to Tana, all she had said was that some members of the squad admitted they missed Jeff, but were too scared to reach out because of David. To her, it was a simple observation. But Todd didn't see it that way. When they ran into each other at the Babylon movie premiere, she claimed Todd got heated, telling her there were two sides to every story. To Tana, it felt like he was defending David again. But Todd's version? Completely different. Sitting with Jeff, he laughed it off, saying the whole thing was blown out of proportion. He claimed he never confronted Tana about Jeff. Instead, he says she tried to hop into a photo with him and Zayn, and as a joke, he covered her face with his hand. To Todd, that was it. No yelling, no confrontation. The internet, of course, ran with Tana's side. Headlines claimed Todd came at her and even accused him of being aggressive. Todd pushed back, saying he never laid a hand on her and that the entire narrative was twisted. Jeff, watching the story unravel in real time, couldn't help but point out the obvious. Someone wasn't remembering things right. And in classic Vlog Squad fashion, what should have been a small misunderstanding spiraled into full-blown controversy. But here's the thing, whether it was Tana's truth, Todd's truth, or somewhere in between, the drama showed just how messy Todd's reputation had become. Even outside of David's shadow, it seemed like every move he made came back to haunt him. And now, with the Vlog Squad behind him and his bridges to David burned, Todd's next move would matter more than ever. By this point, one thing was clear. Todd wasn't just talking to Jeff for old time's sake. He was rebuilding his image. After years of standing in David's shadow, of being remembered more for the scandals around him than for who he actually was, Todd seemed determined to flip the narrative. He emphasized that he's no longer tied down to the Vlog Squad, that he's finding friendships and connections outside of YouTube, and that he's ready to move on from the chaos. But the timing raised eyebrows. Was Todd speaking out now because he genuinely wanted to set the record straight, or because he had no choice? With David's empire crumbling, Jeff commanding his own loyal fanbase, and Todd suddenly without a platform, aligning with Jeff looked less like healing and more like survival. The internet noticed, too. Fans debated whether Todd was finally owning up to his mistakes, or simply trying to attach himself to someone the audience still trusted. Every story he told, from the breakup with Natalie, to David's negligence, to the Tana mess, painted him as someone who had been hurt, silenced, or misunderstood. And maybe some of that was true. But to Jeff's audience, the real test wasn't what Todd said. It was what he would do next. Would he genuinely take accountability and grow? Or would this just be another chapter in the long, messy saga of the Vlog Squad? One thing was certain, Todd's story wasn't just about him anymore. It was about loyalty, redemption, and what happens when the cameras finally stop rolling. But before we wrap it all up, there's one final question lingering in the air, the one everyone was left asking after this conversation. As soon as clips from Jeff and Todd's conversation started circulating, the internet lit up. Some fans were shocked at Todd's honesty, saying it took real courage to admit how badly David mishandled things. To them, this was proof that Todd had finally seen the light and was ready to take accountability. But not everyone was buying it. Plenty of people felt Todd was only speaking up now because he had nothing left to lose. When he was still in the Vlog Squad, when David's approval meant everything, Todd stayed quiet. Years later, after the group collapsed and he was on the outside looking in, now he was ready to tell the truth. It created a clear split in the audience. On one side, you had fans praising Todd for validating what Jeff went through, saying it must have been healing for Jeff to hear those words after all this time. On the other side, you had critics calling him opportunistic, accusing him of trying to rewrite history just to repair his image. And that split reaction only added to the tension, because for every person who saw Todd as redeemable, there was someone else convinced this was just another clout grab. But if Todd's revelations shook the audience, what David didn't say spoke even louder. Through all of this, one voice was noticeably missing: David's. For years, he's dodged accountability, letting silence do the talking while controversies piled up. From Jeff's accident, to the Seth scandal, to multiple friendships crumbling, David rarely addresses anything head-on. And this time was no different. While Todd sat across from Jeff, admitting that things weren't right, David kept quiet. No statements, no clarifications, no attempt to defend himself. To some fans, that silence looked calculated, almost like he was waiting for the noise to pass. The same strategy that's kept him afloat in the past. But here's the problem. Every time someone else speaks up, David's silence becomes louder. By not saying anything, he leaves space for people like Todd to finally fill in the blanks, and that reshapes the narrative in ways David can't control. And with Jeff's audience growing stronger, and Todd now publicly distancing himself, David's lack of response isn't just avoidance anymore. It feels like weakness. It raises the question, if the leader of the vlog squad won't defend his actions, was there ever a defense to begin with? For Todd, this silence was an opportunity. By stepping into the gap David left, he was finally able to tell his side of the story. But whether people believe him or not, one thing's clear: the power dynamic in this friend group has shifted. And that left everyone wondering, what comes next for Todd now that he's out of David's shadow for good? For years, Todd's identity was tied to David's empire. Every vlog, every prank, every cameo, his place in the group gave him visibility, opportunities, and relevance. But without the vlog squad, Todd is forced to stand on his own. And that's exactly where the uncertainty comes in. On one hand, this new chapter gives Todd the freedom to redefine himself. He's no longer just David's sidekick or Natalie's ex. He has the chance to show who he really is, beyond the chaos of the vlog era. Collaborations outside the circle, new content that isn't tied to old drama, and genuine friendships that aren't built on views could give him a second life online. But on the other hand, the shadow of the past still lingers. For every fan rooting for his redemption, there are just as many who see him as complicit in the group's worst moments. To them, no amount of rebranding can erase the fact that Todd was silent when it mattered most. And that's Todd's challenge moving forward, convincing people that he's not just looking for clout or survival, but actually changing. Because while forgiveness might be possible, forgetting isn't. At the end of the day, Todd's future hinges on one thing: whether audiences believe in his growth, or whether they'll always see him as a reminder of David's downfall. And that leads us straight into the bigger question: is Todd really redeeming himself, or just rewriting history? If there's one thing Todd's story exposed, it's how fragile loyalty really was inside the vlog squad. On the surface, they looked like a tight-knit group of friends who would do anything for each other. But the moment scandals hit, the cracks showed. Todd admitted that when Jeff's accident happened, he stayed quiet, not because he didn't care, but because in that world, speaking against David meant risking everything. Loyalty to David wasn't just friendship, it was survival. He was the center of the group, the one with the power, the audience, and the money. Crossing him meant exile. And that's the uncomfortable truth. Friendship inside the vlog squad was often conditional. As long as you played your role, kept quiet, and kept filming, you were safe. The moment you broke that unspoken contract, you were out. Todd found himself in the middle of that tension. Be loyal to David, and you betray Jeff. Support Jeff, and you risk losing David's favor. In the end, his silence showed where his loyalty leaned back then, and it's exactly why fans still question whether his honesty now comes from growth or just from necessity. Because in a group built on clout and content, loyalty wasn't about who you were close to. It was about who held the most power, and that power has shifted dramatically since then. Todd's sit-down with Jeff wasn't just a casual reunion, it was a reckoning. He opened old wounds with Natalie, admitted the ugly truth about David, cleared the air with Tana, and finally showed a side of himself that fans had never seen before. Vulnerable, honest, maybe even desperate. But the bigger picture goes beyond Todd. His story highlights what happens when loyalty, fame, and friendship collide in the world of influencers. 4 years, silence kept the vlog squad together. Now that silence has been broken, and with every confession, the cracks in David's empire only widen. Still, one question lingers. Is Todd genuinely stepping into a new chapter, finally owning his mistakes? Or is this just damage control, a way to rewrite his role in the story before the internet erases him completely? At the end of the day, only time will tell. But one thing's for sure, the truth always finds its way out, even when it's years too late. So what do you think? Is Todd on the path to redemption, or just rewriting history to stay relevant?